Okay, in this video, I'm going to tell you why I switched from Patreon to Skool and why I am very, very, very happy I made that decision. And I'm making this video because when I was really panicking and all tense about whether to make the switch from Patreon to Skool and is it worth it? I'm going to have to move all my community members over to Skool. I was looking for this exact video that I'm going to make now. So that's why I'm making this. And I'm going to tell you why it's been a great decision to move to Skool. And I'm going to also talk a little bit about how I made the transition. And to give this some context, I'm also going to talk a little bit about my creator story and how I got here in the first place. So first of all, hi, I'm George. I don't have a niche. I make whatever I want on this channel because having a niche crushed my creative soul. And actually, this whole process of discovery and reaching this point has been such an amazing journey for me. And now one of the things I'm most passionate about talking about is creative freedom. Anyways, let me give you some context into my creator journey and how I started using Patreon to sort of ground this comparison. So I've been a full-time YouTuber. I was making skate videos full-time. I was making an income on AdSense, brand deals, and merchandise. And I reached a point where I was starting to feel creatively constricted. I felt like I had to keep making skate videos to keep up the ad revenue and keep up the views and perform well in the algorithm and all of that. So I created the Patreon to try to start to develop an income stream that wasn't keeping me tethered to the algorithm. I wanted to be more creatively free, right? So that's why I started the Patreon. And initially I framed it as a way to support me. I think my tiers were in the range of $1 a month to $5, maybe $10 a month or something like that. At first I was just doing exclusive content, early content, things like that. As I progressed on my journey, I ended up starting a podcast about spirituality, and I started promoting the Patreon even more. And the Patreon became a place to discuss the podcast episodes in a private place. I also put the podcast ad-free on Patreon. But something happened on my journey where I unlocked the ability, the confidence to host Zoom events with my community. So I started teaching meditation to my community, and because of the nature of my podcast, my community was interested in that. And I also started hosting, or had the ideas to host different sorts of events, workshops, group calls, different sorts of things like that, okay? So I started doing Zoom events on Patreon. I was like, this is so cool. It's so much more valuable right now. I can start to raise the price. And then what started to bug me was that it was really difficult and annoying to announce the Zoom events all the time. I was looking for a calendar feature so I could just put the events on a monthly calendar and it would be super simple. And Patreon had no such way to do that. Okay, so this is what drove me to start looking for other options. And I found a lot of other options through this research. And through this research is how I discovered Skool. And it immediately, intuitively felt like the best choice. I was just catching a lot of good vibes on there. And, the only things that were holding me back were a fear of making this transition in my creative journey, right? A fear of are the people going to move over? Skool is also $99 a month to host a community. So I was okay, I'm definitely going to have to raise the price. What if people, don't want to pay the higher price? These were sort of my fears, but I was really feeling pulled to Skool because of all the features. And let me elucidate what the big problem was for me on Patreon. Okay, so on Patreon, and you can kind of even sense this in their marketing. One time I saw this marketing that was mentioning creators, connecting creators and fans. That idea doesn't really sit well with me anymore. That sort of has this idea that the creators up here and the fans are down here. It doesn't sit well with me anymore. So what happens on Patreon, that's me. And then there's this wall. There's this wall, and then what I'm sharing on Patreon is reaching all the fans, right? And there's not, with this model, it's still very much it very much felt like another place where I'm just sharing content, which yes, it escapes the need for the algorithm, but it wasn't hitting what I was looking for. Another thing about Patreon is there's not really much fan to fan, right? Because they're using the word fan. So there's the fans and here's the creator. There's not much fan to fan interaction. They were starting to build out like the group chat, but it just still wasn't really feeling that way, right? So let me erase that because that wasn't really there. Obviously, when I hosted Zoom events, let me wait for that siren. Obviously, by stepping into hosting Zoom events, posting the Zoom links on Patreon, and people would come in, the walls started to break down and the walls between the fans started to break down as well. But I noticed that like the full vision of this like interconnected community thing, it was not coming through on Patreon, right? It was still very much this, I'm up here as the holy creator and then my fans are down there. It wasn't serving me, right? So Skool, not only do they have the calendar feature, which seems like a no-brainer. I'm kind of surprised that Patreon doesn't have it yet. Skool had the calendar feature to do events, but they also have, and let me actually at this point, I'm going to also get into a screen recording. Probably more effective to just show you. So look at Patreon here, right? It's just this vertical feed and it's just this wall of posts. So it's very much like another content platform, but now check out my spiritual creator community on Skool. There's a discussion board here with different topics. So one of the things I did on Patreon was I shared the podcast and people could discuss my podcast every time I posted it. And I'm still doing that here, right, in this podcast tab. But now, people have profiles. People can comment on the post, discuss, but you can also click on the members' profile. So like there's this whole members section where you can see everybody has a bio. On Patreon, this wasn't really a thing, but what's cool about Skool is the members can post on this as well. So people in my community are posting for feedback, posting updates, sharing their experiences. It's really nice to have these different tabs. Here's the calendar feature, by the way, where you can put in all the different events that you're hosting and everyone can just click on it and get the Zoom link. Immediately when I made this switch to Skool, first of all, everyone started engaging more. I noticed people started talking to each other more friendships, relationships were being created, right? It wasn't just me to all these people, it was all of us together. So it became more of like this. It doesn't even feel right to put me up at the top tier. Like, yes, I started the community and I'm pouring a lot into it, but it's not just me pouring into all these people. It's also like all of us pouring into each other, Like, seriously, like, and I'm getting so much from my community members and they're getting a lot from each other. It's more like we're just human beings. And really cool things started happening. So since the nature of the Skool platform is more conducive to this vision that I had, suddenly that vision just started manifesting in a really beautiful way. So this was what I was hoping for by switching to Skool. And when I was on Patreon and feeling all this fear and tension and uncertainty around making the switch, what I'm sharing with you now is exactly what I wanted to know. And in my experience, the switch was perfect. The way that I actually made the switch was I just decided, fuck it, I need to follow my intuition. I need to do the thing that I think is better for me and my community. And I announced that I was switching over. I raised the price to make sure I could cover, at least the Skool membership. And I told everybody, I gave it like a month to make the transition. I kept reminding people, and that transition went really smoothly. Pretty much everyone from my Patreon community came over. What I realized is on this creator journey, it's not really about where you're creating. It's about who you are, and it's about what you're sharing and the energy you're bringing. And y'all know the 1,000 true fans theory. Like, those people are gonna move over with you. And what I want to suggest to you is that a platform like Skool is going to explode your potential and explode the possibilities of what you can do. Like, just a couple months into Skool now, my mind is going wild with ideas. There are so many possibilities. You can turn Skool into a coaching community. You can teach a curriculum. You also have a classroom tab. That was another thing actually that was so super annoying about Patreon is I was building this log of like recorded meditations on Zoom and community events. And all I could do is like put them on this vertical feed, and they built in a collections feature, but it just kind of didn't really feel right. I don't know. Everything's just this feed. But here on Skool, you've got this awesome classroom section where you can put a whole course in here, or you could just put like meditation recordings, which I started doing here. So, the inability on Patreon to like have resources in one place for my community to access was another really bummer thing that pushed me to make this transition. And, now that I'm really getting in the sauce on Skool, it's just absolutely been amazing. So if you have any questions about this, about the difference between Patreon and Skool, if you want to make the switch, feel free to leave me a comment. And if you're feeling ready to start your Skool community, there's a link in the description that you can use to sign up. That's an affiliate link. Very much appreciate you using it and supporting me in that way. And I'm super excited for your journey where you're going to do amazing things with your community, I think that is what I wanted to get across. I hope that this served you. If you are interested in joining my community, I teach meditation. It's been really interesting. I've been finding out what exactly it is along the way. That's been really cool. And Skool has given me the possibility to do that. On Patreon, it was really just like the features made it difficult for more of a community symbiosis, new thing to be born. Anyways, on my community, I teach meditation. We have group calls. We are creators on spiritual journeys who want to express themselves authentically, use social media in an authentic way, and connect in a very, very loving space. So that I'll leave that link to my community in the description as well. Yeah, lots of love. If you're interested in following along my journey, hit the subscribe button. Please leave a like on your way out. Leave all your comments. Just say hi if you want to, and I'll see you soon.